Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time I'm fully reviewing the Tier 7 Swedish tank destroyer, the Typ B. This is a ludicrously fast tank. 65 km an hour top speed limit enables it to keep up with the fastest of medium and light tanks, but it also has a decent tank destroyer gun, a 90mm at Tier 7, which is very flexible with 10 degrees of gun depression, a great wide gun arc, and enough penetration to be able to contest anything that you're going to be able to fire at, pretty much with the standard ammunition. If you like to control the range of engagement and snipe from afar, then this might be the tank for you. Stick around, I've got some ace tanker gameplay coming right up after I fully run down the statistics of this vehicle. So let's compare the Typ to the Tier 7 French tank destroyer, the AMX ACMLE46, the famous Tier 7 German tank destroyer, the Jagdpanther, and also the Su-100M1. It should be noted in this comparison that I'm choosing to use the 90mm gun on the AMX-46 and also the 88 on the Jagdpanther, and both of those vehicles can use 100 and 105mm guns respectively. So the Typ, as you would expect, does have a 90mm main armament, and unlike a lot of the Swedish tanks, there isn't really a choice of two different kinds of guns. You have a bad 90mm and a good 90mm. DPM wise, the vehicle is the lowest in this comparison, and significantly so. The DPM of the Soviet vehicle is 30% higher than the Typ, and of the German vehicle over 20% higher. And that is certainly one of the most disappointing things about this vehicle, is that it doesn't really kill anything quickly for a tank destroyer, which is probably one of the main aspects of the tank class, right? Nevertheless, the vehicle gets decent penetration with its standard rounds, 210, that's just shy of the 46, better than the Jagdpanther and significantly better than the Su-100. Alpha damage wise, the Typ feels a little lackluster. 240 doesn't feel right on a Tier 7 tank destroyer in my opinion, when vehicles like the Su-152 can either have 390 alpha damage or alternatively, if you use the really big gun, 700, whereas the Jagdpanther with the 105mm has 320 alpha damage, and if you use the 100 on the 46 then you've got 300 alpha damage. And as we mentioned, the rate of fire doesn't really make up for this, and so it will take you a substantial amount of time to fire 7 shots at an IS-3, for example, to be able to take it out. On the other hand, one of the best things about this tank is the shell velocity of its standard rounds. 1,275 allows this thing to snipe at long range with ease, and certainly outclasses the other vehicles in this comparison. The vehicle also carries 48 rounds of ammunition. That gives it a potential damage of 11,500, so you shouldn't really run out at Tier 7. Now onto the weapon handling. 2.3 seconds is okay, but one of the interesting things is if you use the 105mm on the Jagdpanther, the vehicle has 1.7 seconds aim time, which is in line with the Su-100M1 and kind of makes 2.3 seconds feel a little bit long, which is made worse by the fact that this vehicle doesn't really have very good gun dispersion values. 0.24 when moving is worse than the Jagdpanther and the Su-100M1, and the vehicle is also worse when traversing the gun at 0.12 compared to 08 and 08, but at least it is better than the 46. Accuracy wise, the Typ gets 0.36. That's really not very good for a low caliber gun, and pales compared to all of the other vehicles in this comparison. But now onto one of the strongest aspects of this tank, the fact that it gets 10 degrees of gun depression, a lot like the MLE46, and significantly better than the Jagdpanther and miles better than the awful gun depression on the Su-100M1. This allows the Typ to work ridge lines a lot like the top tier medium tank can, and this is made even easier by the fact that the vehicle can traverse the gun 20 degrees to the left and 20 degrees to the right, which allows it to stay put for longer, keep your binoculars activated, and not have to make those awkward hull turns when a vehicle is going along in front of you very quickly indeed. So far we found out that the vehicle doesn't really have the best gun, and its weapon handling, well, it's not disastrous, but it's certainly not great. How about the mobility? And that's where this vehicle really shines. 65 km an hour is ludicrously fast, and the vehicle goes at 20 backwards as well, which can be very useful for pulling back over a ridgeline, unlike the 46 and the Jagdpanther. And while its engine power doesn't look great, this tank is very light indeed. Its total weight is just over 13 tons. And so if you get a chance to ram one of these vehicles, definitely take it. This actually means that the vehicle has a very nice specific power ratio of 23.46. That would be really, really good on a medium tank and still good on a light tank. And that makes this vehicle pretty much 50% faster than all of the other tanks in this comparison, as its ground resistance traverses are comparable as well. However, the vehicle's tank traverse is not exceptional at 30 degrees, which is less than the Jagdpanther and the SU-100M1, as that means that you do have to slow down significantly to go around corners, or you're certainly going to overshoot them. So this mobility is certainly great news for the IKV-90, and it's gonna need it, because take a look at the armor of this tank. 15mm at the front, 12 at the side, and 12 at the rear. And obviously with the cancelled overmatch changes in World of Tanks, this means that every single caliber of gun, which is 46mm and higher, is going to overmatch this tank every single time. And I can't really think of many tier 5 tanks that do not have 46mm caliber guns. And so that means that no matter what hits this tank and whatever angle it hits it at, it will always go in the current mechanics of World of Tanks. And the vehicle is also quite large and flat, and this is probably one of the most juicy artillery targets I have ever seen, and considering it has practically no protection, you always get one shot by artillery, which can be immensely frustrating. These overmatch changes really did hurt this tank. Look how well angled the mid plate is. If we're looking at it like this before the vehicle is using its gun depression, that means that the plate is angled at 83 degrees. And who knows what kind of a caliber shell that would have been able to ricochet, but instead the fact of the matter is that everybody overmatches it. And just to compare it very quickly to other tanks, let's angle the AMX to its perfect angle here. The front plate about 150 up to 180. All the side here would be an auto ricochet. And if the vehicle is using its gun depression at the front, then we're talking about 190, 200mm of effective armor. Jagdpanther wise, certainly not the strongest. If it's using its gun depression, we're up to about 150. And if we look at the SU, well, some parts of this tank are 160 even on the lower plate. And what that means is that these three tanks will easily ricochet every single tier 5 vehicle and many tier 6s, and you know, sometimes you're going to be able to pull off a bounce against tier 7 and higher. The IKV on the other hand will not. Furthermore, the vehicle has the joint lowest hit points of any tier 7 tank at 800, along with the Kruppsteher Waffenträger, and it also has some abysmal view range for tier 7 at 340 meters. So how would I recommend that you equip the IKV-90B? Well, firstly, definitely take a medium caliber tank gun rammer because you want to fire 10% faster, right? Next, because the vehicle's view range is so darn low at 340 meters, you have to take a binocular telescope on this vehicle, if of course you want to be spotting for yourself. Next, I feel like there's a choice of two effective modules on this vehicle. Number one, you probably want to take Improved Ventilation Class 2 to give you 5% cruise skills, which will make your tank pretty much about 2.6% better overall. But alternatively, if you want to really remain hidden and use that lovely wide gun arc of 20 degrees to the left and 20 degrees to the right, then maybe a camouflage net will be better for you. And as we can see, the concealment, the camo rating of this tank, as it is quite low profile, is excellent. Cruise skills wise, you want to be taking concealment first because you've got such low hit points. If you do get detracked, then you're probably going to have to use your repair kit on it, and the second time you get detracked, well, you're dead anyway. Then when you reach your second skill, retrain for Sixth Sense, then take camouflage again. Then when you reach your third skill, you want to be taking Brothers in Arms, then Sixth Sense, then camouflage. Then I'd like to take things like situational awareness on this vehicle and recon just to get that view range up. For the gunner, it's going to be the same deal. Take concealment. Then I'd probably like to take things like snapshot. Then I'd probably be taking designated target on this vehicle. It could be quite useful to prolong the spotting of your opponents. But remember, this is a perk and only will work at 100%. For your driver, you want to be taking concealment. Then I'd probably be taking off-road driving to increase the mobility of this vehicle further, then clutch braking to improve the track traverse, and for your loader, you want to be prioritizing getting safe stowage so you don't get ammo racked as much. And apart from that, there really isn't too much usefulness of the loader here, and it's a shame that the loader is not the radio operator as well, because that puts a lot of pressure on your commander. But anyway, I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's see how this sneaky sniper performs in some gameplay. So firstly, let's take a look at the ideal situation for the IKV-90B. We're playing on Prokhorovka and we are top tier. Now immediately I want to use the mobility of this vehicle to take an advanced position to hopefully be able to dominate this game. Now we're playing on Encounter. And what Encounter means is that a lot less people focus on going down the west. If this was a standard game, I would be very worried about people advancing aggressively down the west and having a lot of tank destroyers sitting around at the back, and then you'll have light tanks proceeding to this kind of location, and even some trying to rush for the bush to be able to or the bush, you know. I mean, it almost doesn't even really need talking about. These bushes here are, should we say, the LT15 of any map. These give you the highest opportunity to get the most spotting in the game, really, those bushes. So we've taken a swing at a T50. It doesn't look like we hit him. Hopefully we'll be able to hit him now. And just look how quickly the shells go through the air. As I highlighted, excellent shell velocity, 1,275. Is awesome, and it allows you to really not have to give too much lead against your targets. And that's something that I don't think I appreciated while I was playing this tank. But now knowing the statistics and also watching and reviewing some of my gameplay back, the way that you can snipe a lot more accurately with the shell velocity is something that probably makes up for the mediocre accuracy of this tank. Nobody really wants to have 0.36 accuracy on a tank destroyer. Tank destroyers seem to be cutting it closer to the 0.33, the 0.32 area, and 0.36 certainly feels more like STB1 at tier 10, which can be immensely frustrating. So the enemy haven't really pushed too far forwards, and considering how far that Skoda T40 has gone, I felt like being a little bit aggressive here. Do you notice how the reticle doesn't really bump as we go over the undulations of the terrain? And that's because this vehicle does have excellent gun arc, the 20 degrees to the left, 20 degrees to the right, but more importantly the gun depression and elevation aren't too bad either. And so this tank does feel rather nice on ridge lines. And obviously if you are using your gun depression, you do make your tank a much smaller target. The actual, I guess the superstructure of this tank up here isn't too big. So we've managed to sneak our way in to position, the good camo rating hopefully concealing us, and also importantly the good engine power able to have the grunt to be able to go up the slope. And sitting in this kind of position, I do feel rather confident that we're not going to get spotted. That KV-1S on the enemy team, I think he's got about 330 to 350 meters view range base, and he's not really going to be getting it up all that far. On the move, even with coated optics, he's not going to be able to spot us there. These bushes should be able to protect us. But finally, we catch a glimpse of some of the tier 6 heavy tanks on the enemy team. I think about shooting the KV-2, but I want to kill the Churchill first. So obviously, everybody knows about the bush mechanics. You go in until you can see through the bush. That means that you can spot through the bush, and then when you pull back, and now you can fire through the bush with its maximum camo rating. And so we put 3 rounds into the Churchill now. You're starting to see that the DPM of this tank is rather low, and I think that if I'd been in one of the other vehicles in this comparison, I probably would have been able to kill that Churchill a little bit quicker there, or if I'd had the higher alpha damage. And now what you're seeing is the real ugly side to this tank. And that's really why I picked this replay. It's almost the perfect replay to showcase the IKV-90B. You've seen that we have the mobility to get ourselves into aggressive locations. We've got the camo rating as well to be able to stay there and continue firing right up until, I guess, 150 meters when we're going to get spotted. But, and also we've got the nice handling gun at mid to long ranges with a very comfortable flexibility on it as well. But as soon as you do get spotted, you just lose your health. I'm pretty sure that I was getting shot by, tier 5, tier 6 tanks. And remember, this is a tier 7 tank destroyer. This is perfect matchmaking for this vehicle. If I'd been playing in the 46 or any other tank there, I would have probably just held my ground, kept shooting whatever was in front of me, tried to angle my armor, and I probably could have killed them. I would have probably done the same in the Jagdpanther as well, just slowly reversed up. And I probably would have been able to ricochet a hell of a lot of shells. This tank, on the other hand, I had to immediately hard left and try and use the momentum of the slope to be able to get out of the situation as quickly as possible. One thing that is a little bit disappointing about this tank as well is, with the Swedish tank destroyers, especially at the high tier ones like the UDES and the STRV-103, I guess it's 103O, is it? And the 103B. They managed to go backwards at exceptionally fast rates. The UDES goes backwards at 50 and the tier 9 and the tier 10 go backwards at 45. So with those vehicles, I would have just gone backwards instead of doing the big loop that you saw me have to do here. Because if I'd reversed at 20 kilometers an hour this way, that wouldn't have been able to get back far enough, right? If I'd been in the tier 8, 9 or 10, I could have just reversed instead of having done a full turn and a hard forwards. Nevertheless, 2,700 damage is always decent for a tier 7 tank, irrelevant of this being great matchmaking, and we've casually picked up 5 kills, but we are now on 9 hit points, and I could pretty much just have a little bit of a graze with an enemy tank and I would be destroyed right now. So I'm just trying to use my binoculars. One of the things that's frustrating about this vehicle, the mediocre view range means that we have to stay stationary whenever we want to be spotting. So you've always got to consider that. Nevertheless, the Comet, can I really risk it too much here? I kind of want to get a little bit more from this game. We've nearly got a Top Gun. That 6th kill is always so tempting to try and rush to be able to get, right? And so I think I want to be aggressive. The Bishop on the enemy team certainly is a threat. He hasn't been spotted yet. I expect that both of the enemy artillery will be located in this location. But alternatively, sometimes they like to hide around here, but that's rather unusual. I'm thinking that the Comet might be trying to come over to hunt me. I have been isolated on the western flank, and I really thought that he was going to come over and have a go at me, especially after we put a couple of rounds into, I guess, his platoon mate. Yeah, in the other Comet. So now that I've managed to get 445 meters away from the train track here, I decided to stop and try and spot the Nashorn. I'm using the maximum view range ring on the minimap to be able to do that. I definitely did not spot that Nashorn. It was the KV-13 or the T-150 who did. But I decided to stop anyway to just keep having glimpses, or should we say setting up to be able to see if we can find the Comet. Because the last thing I want right now is to get spotted in the open. If I do, I'm pretty much dead every single time. So I'm just advancing about 30 meters and then setting up again to see if we can spot. Now I'm going to load a high explosive round because I feel like I might be able to take out the artillery in a single shot if I do. 320 alpha damage and 45 millimeters of penetration. Can't believe we haven't spotted them yet. He must be right around the corner if he's going to be there, and yes he is. His reactions are good, however. He does pull back quickly and we fail to penetrate. Only doing 146 damage. That means we're going to have to hit the second. Oh my lord, no, 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 no. Yes, okay. Good. Saved, saved. The Comet just missed us, I think, from the left. Doesn't look like he can quite see us because we're quite low profile. I realize that and I go forwards and we see a shell just whiz past us as he dies. Now that the Comet is dead, I should be able to get into position to finish off the Bishop. And easy kill. Ammo racking the Bishop at the end unnecessarily. So 7 kills, 3,200 damage. Great result. But let's check out some more gameplay, this time against higher tiered opponents. This time the matchmaker hasn't been quite so friendly to us. There are 5 tanks on the enemy team that are 1 tier higher than us, a whole host of tier 7s and tier 6s. I guess that means that this is pretty much average for the IKV-90B, right? But in retrospect, I don't think really the matchmaker matters too much for this vehicle, because as I mentioned, when you've only got 15 millimeters of hull armor at the front and everything that you meet is going to overmatch you, it doesn't matter what's engaging you. Oh, of course, higher tier tanks have got higher alpha damage and usually higher DPMs, which is going to take your 800 hit points away from you a lot faster. And I guess with your penetration, your 210 millimeters of penetration on your standard rounds is going to be a lot more significant against tier 5s than tier 9s. But I think if any tier 7 tank destroyer doesn't care how it gets matched up, it's probably going to be this one. So I've used the speed of the IKV-90B to race into position. Now I'm going to set up my binoculars and hope that I can provide the supporting role. But there is nothing there. Oh gosh, this position on Erlenberg is just so darn dominant. Especially when you're defending against a normal game or an encounter. Because if they manage to push down here, then you just have easy shots. Oh, the .36 accuracy on this tank showing its ugly head. And I suddenly feel like, wow, I'm not really going to have much opportunity here, because look where all the heavies are hanging around. All of their heavies are hanging around, I guess, the spawn area. The IS-3 is just making their way along the north right now. And so at this time, my feelings were, let's get forward, let's get shooting. I thought that this AMX was going to have all the fun without me. And then I just decide, I look like I hesitate there. I can't quite think about what I want to do. But I'm going to push forward, I'm going to have a go at this Pershing. See if I can put a 90mm hole into his tank. Will we? Ah, not quite. Fair enough, the gun handling on this vehicle is quite good, but it's not that good. Now we're going to push up onto the ridgeline, maybe challenge the OI. There's also a KV-2 on the enemy team. Yeah, we haven't really seen how high explosive rounds hit this tank yet. Maybe we'll be seeing that later on. The IS-3 pushing right over, put around against the side of his turret, but it's very well angled. And I just realized how much of a mistake it was to push this far forwards, considering that we've got, I guess, 4 of the top tier tanks on the enemy team pushing against us. So I'm going to use the key aspect of this vehicle, the mobility, to be able to control the range of engagement. If I sat on that ridgeline, I would be a dead man. The IS-3s can 2-shot me. The Pershing can remove my health, I guess, in 3 or 4 shots, depending on how lucky he gets. But by pulling back and using the mobility, now I can shoot at these guys for free. There's nothing they can do. 1 round into the IS-3, and what is this? Oh my lord. Okay. Wow. Derpenberg is striking. How is that T-43 still alive? I wonder if the IS-3's gun is low enough. And the T-43 pushes him down a little bit more. Oh my goodness. The IS-3 can't depress his gun over behind. Wow, I can't believe that one didn't go through. The magical, mystical space armor on the IS-3, absorbing the shell. Looks like his buddies are coming over to help him. As the T-43 is in the water on 3 of his hit points, the IS-3 manages to ram him to death, but in doing so, he gets tracked. And now we just have a great opportunity to unload on these IS-3s. And really, this is when you're going to have your best games in this tank. When you manage to try and get your opponents at about 445 meters, where with binoculars and a couple of good crew skills, you're going to be able to spot them. And right now, if you're confused as to what I'm doing, I'm just holding down my right mouse button where the IS-3 was last spotted and firing. That's one of my recommendations. If you get into a situation where you see a tank is about to disappear, aim, hold down your right mouse button, leave the first person mode so you can still be more aware of what's going on around you, and just continue firing. Now with binocular setup, I should be able to spot those IS-3s when they come to about 430 meters, I'd say, depending on how they decide to crew their tank. It looks like we actually spotted him at 435 there. Put 1 into his side. I'm definitely spotting for this E-25. There's no way that E-25 is managing to catch a glimpse of the IS-3s there. And we clutch a shot there right into the IS-3. So that's 1,902 hit points of IS-3s we managed to snack up there. And now I'm feeling a little bit more confident. Seeing how my team is pushing down the east so aggressively, and the fact that we've got an M4A1 Revolurise, which has recently been buffed, sitting behind me in a supporting role, I think it's time to take the fight to the enemy team to see if we can manage to pick up some lovely, tasty experience. And remember, when you're shooting at vehicles that are a whole tier higher than you than that, and you're also probably spotting for maybe the E-25 behind you, then you're going to be having a good day. Whoop, there he is. Looks like I reacted a little bit faster than he did. Oh! That high explosive shell whizzes over my tank. If that had hit me, that would have one-shot me. I think it's got, what, about 910 average damage, or is it 950 on the KV-2? If he'd managed to hit me there, I certainly wouldn't have been a happy bunny. What's up with that? Has the KV-2 now got an HD turret? Looks a little weird. Anyway, we put a couple of rounds into him. The Revolurise finishes him off. And we're going to see if we can finish off the IS-3. And it's just like an IS-3 buffet right now, right, guys? Oh, this is just lovely, juicy, tasty. Thank you very much, IS-3. I appreciate it. Picking up our second kill on that platoon. And 2,892 damage done so far. Now at the end of the game, that's one of the best things about this vehicle, actually, is that the top speed limit allows you to just get around and polish off the enemy team, right? If you were playing in a medium tank, you can manage to do that. If you're playing in a heavy tank, well, not so much. Some of the tier 7 tank destroyers, well, all of the tier 7 tank destroyers are much slower than this vehicle, and some of them are terribly slow. A lot like the T7, right? And this vehicle just manages to get around, get into position, and still get some tasty treats at the end of the game. So if you're trying to get that last extra kill, or maybe there's just a big juicy artillery on the enemy team that you can try and make use of, then it does feel rather satisfying and allows you to pet that extra experience if you're interested. So I'm deciding that I'm going to go ram this KV-85, see if I can take his tracks off. I do. I'll take his tracks off to try and get the extra assistance damage if I can. And I was wondering if I could try and ram myself into him, if I could get underneath his gun. But then I realized that my hull is pretty much just as tall as the KV-85 on the enemy team. And you definitely can't get under the traverse of somebody's gun, or shall I say the depression of their gun, driving this tier 7 Swedish tank destroyer. Our first round on Prokhorovka was an ace tanker, a high caliber, and a top gun for the 3,346 damage that we dealt, 7 kills, 1,323 base experience points. And I don't think I fired any heat rounds this game, so we make 33,000 credits profit. Next up on Erlenberg, we secure a high caliber, this time in the higher tier game, for 4,130 damage that we dealt, also a tank sniper, 1,381 base experience points, and I don't think I fired any heat rounds again, even though I was engaging those IS-3s because we had their side most of the time, so we make 43,000 credits profit. And this result was all down to the fact that we saw that we were going to get ourselves into a bad situation and used the pretty much light tank mobility of this vehicle to reassess, reposition, and engage our opponents in a much more effective situation. And that's really going to be the key thing that you have to develop if you want to succeed in this tank. Now, overall, the IKV-90 Type B is certainly not going to be a vehicle that I'm going to be playing every day. I think the reason why you play this tank is so that you get to the UDES, so you can try out that siege mode gameplay, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad tank. You can certainly have some good results in it. It just feels immensely frustrating when you do get spotted how hard you get punished in this vehicle. And so I think that if you're a knowledgeable player and you equip the tank correctly and you choose the right crew skills, then you're going to have some great results in this tank on specific maps. However, it's going to require a lot of patience, something that I certainly did not have when I was playing this tank for the first time. And for an impatient player, I think this vehicle is going to be brutally punishing, and the grind towards the UDES is going to be immensely painful. And do you know what? I think that even the UDES and even the higher tier Swedish tank destroyers do require a lot of patience and long range sniping. But then again, if you're choosing to go down this line, unless you're doing it for the sake of it, that's probably the game style that you want to play. So hopefully you enjoyed this tank review, or maybe it was just useful to you. If it was, please give it a like, it really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments what you think about the IKV-90. Do you think it looks like a terrible tank? Do you think it looks like a great tank? Have you played it yourself? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And if so, why? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.